Hey everyone, that's a freaking Ford Ranger. So this here is a 2019 Ford Ranger Wildtrak. And the guy who owns this has bought it only just a few weeks ago, and immediately he wanted to do some upgrades to this because he wants to use this for going out on hunting trips and stuff like that. So he wants to put some armor in both the front and the back of this, and also underneath. So we're going to be fitting this out with some bull bars and some undercarriage protection. He's already went and bought everything that he wants on here, so let's just go right ahead and get this inside and see what we got. But once again, I find myself with not enough space in my workshop, so we just gotta make a little bit of room for ourselves, and that thing is not moving, so we're gonna move that. And yes, I am still sitting on a jerry can. Look, I will get around to putting some seats in this, I promise. But every now and then I do have to make some money for all these projects. Now, did I really have to park like that? No, but why wouldn't you? All right, let's get back to what we were doing. Well, that was quite a lot of unboxing. They sure wrapped this stuff up really well. Anyway, all of this stuff is from MorE 4x4 out of Poland. I don't have any personal experience with this brand, but I do have pretty good experience with Polish stuff in general, so it's going to be interesting to see how this all goes together. So we have a rear bumper, and we have some undercarriage protection, and we have a front bull bar with a whole lot of brackets for it, so that's going to be interesting. But I think we'll start with some of the slightly simpler stuff, so let's just go ahead and see if we can get that bumper on it. I've never worked on these Rangers before either, so I kind of have to figure it out as we go. Right, so we just spent a few minutes trying to figure this out because seemingly we have a lot of brackets and mounting equipment for not a whole lot of bumper, but it seems like it's supplied with brackets for different types of trailer hitches, so I don't even think we need this stuff. But there's not a whole lot in the way of manuals either. There's really just a couple of pictures of how it's supposed to look when it's done, so some of this is a little bit of guesswork. Now we're just going to try to mount some of this up and see if it makes sense. Well, as usual, nothing is ever that easy. So these brackets that they have provided, they have this little spacer piece that is welded onto them. I think that is only there for when you do not have a trailer hitch, because no matter how we put this up, it's all getting canted at weird angles because of that spacer, and it doesn't line up with these bolts up here anyway. So we're gonna cut this spacer off because that's really the only chance we have of getting this onto there. Now luckily this is just a spacer piece, so it is only held on with a couple little tag welds. Alright, so even after we got rid of these spacers, with a lot more trial and error, we still can't get this thing to fit 100%. The only bolt hole that will work is this one right here, but we're gonna need another one right up here. And also we have to move them down a bit for the height to look somewhat normal. So we're gonna get rid of this entire top part of these mounts, and we're gonna make a new set of holes down here instead. Now he's also gone and bought the kit with these big beefy recovery points to put on there. I mean, you gotta have that. So he's gonna be mounting those up while I drill some holes and modify those mounts. I'm gonna try to replicate these slotted holes so we still have some adjustment in this thing. Right, here we go. Now we have 2 extra slots for the bolts that the original bumper was mounted in. So this should fit, and also it seems that we are clearing the bolts that are sitting slightly higher up, so we don't actually have to cut off the top part. So I think we're good to go. We're gonna give this another shot. But first we're gonna give this a little bit of paint so it doesn't start rusting right away. Jesus. Like it was meant to be. Right, check that out. You can hardly tell they've been modified. Now, we did just do a quick test before painting it, so it should all fit together now. But from what I can see, there's really 2 possible reasons as to why these brackets didn't fit correctly. First off, this whole trailer hitch might be slightly different from the one that this kit was actually designed for. Even though it does look like the same type on these very lacking instructions, there is a few little visual differences between this hitch and the one they have on here. Even though this one is an original Ford Motor Company part. But there may have been some slight variations in these things over the years. Who knows? But the other possible reason might be that maybe we've been supplied with some incorrect brackets. Because we've also got those things, and they don't fit anywhere. They don't fit any of the holes on the bumper, they don't fit any of the holes on the car, they're not showing up on the drawings. We really have no idea what those things are for. Anyway, it should work now, so let's get these things on there. We only want them loosely on here for now, then we'll get it all lined up later and tighten everything down. Now there is one more modification we're going to have to do to this before we mount it up, because this truck is equipped with proximity sensors, or these little parking sensors, and there are no pre-drilled holes for those in this bumper. Now I assume that is because most people probably delete these sensors because they're not really any good when you're going off-road. They're just going to be sounding the alarm all the time. But we are going to be keeping them on this vehicle, so we'll just have to make a few holes so we can mount them in this. And of course, it's not just a simple round hole. That would have been too easy, wouldn't it? Well, one of them is going to be a bit of a tight fit. It'll have to be right under this light mount. And the final touch is just the license plate and a couple of lights for that. Check this out. We finally got to this point. It ended up looking pretty professional after all, but it took a little more work to get here than we anticipated. But now we can finally get to the fun part of putting this up on the truck. Hier kommer 6-7 stykker. Navi. Right on. Here we go. That is looking solid. And it looks like our lights are working as well. Now we gotta do a quick test of these backup sensors and we should be good to go. I'll just try and get a little bit close. Oh yeah, I can hear it beeping in there. Sweet. Now we're gonna back it in so we can start working on the front. All right, so next up I was thinking that we were going to be mounting those skid plates, but on a closer inspection it looks like they might have to bolt onto the lower edge of this front bull bar, so we're going to go and put the bull bar on first. Well, looks like this bull bar might be presenting us with some of the same challenges as we had on the rear. Well, hopefully not the whole bracket situation. I'm hoping it's going to fit just on, but the manual for this, or the instruction for this, is also really lacking. It's just a set of poor quality pictures, basically telling you to take the bumper off, put a bracket on, move the radar, and mount the new bumper. Like, we kind of figured as much that was sort of what would have to happen here, but this bull bar comes with a whole lot of brackets and cover plates and support mounts and extra little brackets, cover-up pieces, light mount spacers, a whole box full of different mounts and bolts. It would have been really nice with some slightly more clear indication of exactly where all this goes and which way it's supposed to be turned and what bolts to use and such. I mean, we're just going to start mounting it up and just figure it out as we go, but I know that not everyone is going to be able to do that. So I will say, even though the product is very cool, looks very well made, the instructions really could be better. But yeah, let's just start mounting things up. And I assume we have to start with that. But first, we have a whole ton of plastic out here we need to get rid of. Now, because this is such a new and fancy car, we have one of these collision radars, and we're gonna have to move that up a little higher because we're gonna be removing this whole lower part. This kit does come with this nice big relocation bracket for the radar. That's going to put it up here in the middle and behind the front grille. So luckily that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Right, so immediately we did run into another issue, not so much with the bracket, But this radar that we have on this truck is not the exact same type as they have on in the pictures of this manual. So this is not going to fit on the mounting bracket out here in the middle. However, in one of the other pictures, with no further description, they do have this type of radar, but it's mounted over here in the corner. Now that's not really possible either. There is some brackets that kind of look like they might fit for this, but they don't fit 100%. Besides, they're going to bring it out this far, and that's just not going to work because it won't fit for the front grille. So we have to bring this further back and also make up some brackets, or at least modify the one that's on here to make this fit. So there's a little bit of extra work here. Just going to take this off. I don't think it's going to appreciate cutting and welding on the radar itself. This is going to end up being more solid than Ford's original bracket. Alright, so while our paint is drying up, I think we're going to go right ahead and move all these proximity sensors into the new bumper. We're going to have to make holes in that one as well. But I think it's going to be more or less the same process as we did on the rear. Does look like the exact same type of sensor, so it's pretty familiar. So as for the radar itself, the only thing we're going to make sure is that it is completely level, at least in the vertical direction. Other than that, we're just going to leave it as it is. If we do have any problems, we're going to need to get it calibrated, but we're going to have to go to a Ford dealer to do that. So we're just going to run it as is and see if we get any problems. Now the new bumper is prepared for a set of fog lights, but it's not going to fit these enormous ones that are in the original. So what we have is a set of these nifty little Iron Man lights and a set of brackets that are made specifically for that. And they're going to go right on the back side of this, shining through this grille in the front here. Now because we did end up moving the sensors quite a bit, I am going to have to extend this part of the wiring harness, making it about 20 centimeters longer. Well, now that we removed such an enormous corner of this bumper, we are going to have to trim these inner wheel arches down a bit. We are going to get a much greater angle of approach. This is going to expose the tire quite a bit. Gonna try not to cut into the tire. Look at that. Check that out. We really got it opened up in the front now. So next up, we have a whole lot of holes we need to cover up on the top of this thing. Now right here under the lights, it did come with a set of cover pieces that go on right around there. But we still have to do something about the front. Now as for the grille, we once again run into a little bit of an issue because the original grille was also part of the bumper. So we would have to make a cut and separate this lower piece. But for once, we actually do have a solution in hand. We're going to be giving this a little bit of a facelift with the front grille of a Raptor. That's going to look really cool. So now we can finally go ahead and bring in the last piece of this equation, which is going to be these skid plates. And hopefully that is going to be a pretty straightforward bolt-on. But then again, that's exactly what we hope for with everything else as well. All right, people, here we go. The Ford Ranger has been armored and it is ready to hit some forest trails with a little less plastic and a little more confidence. But between you and me, I know he's only doing it to make it look cool, which is a perfectly acceptable reason to do this. So what do you think? Did we make it cool? Now I will just say, for these supposedly being bolt-on parts, we did have to modify quite a few things to make this work, and it ended up taking a bit longer than we expected. But honestly, that is not uncommon for these aftermarket kits, and I think we ended up with a pretty nice result. But we're not going to be doing any off-road driving this time around because we are running out of daylight and he has to head on home. So we are going to end this video here, but I hope you found this entertaining or maybe even interesting. Thank you for watching along, and I'll see you in the next one.